Have you ever noticed your best friend becoming your biggest critic the moment you fall in love?
The same person who supported every decision you ever made suddenly has a long list of concerns about your new partner.
This is not jealousy in the way you think.
It is a chilling psychological transformation where your most loyal anchor starts using emotional gatekeeping to sabotage the relationship that threatens something they were depending on.
Part 1. The Anchor of Identity. To really understand how this happens, we've got to look backward. We need to look at what this friendship was actually providing for you both before romance ever even entered the picture. And that brings us to a concept known as emotional gatekeeping. Now think about those really intense long-term friendships. You know, the ones formed during massive periods of personal development like high school or college? In those bonds, your friend quietly becomes this central pillar that practically holds together your entire sense of self. And hey, deep friendships are genuinely one of the most stabilizing forces we have as human beings. But when a friendship carries that much structural weight, it completely sets the stage for a massive psychological shift. So here's the kicker. A serious romantic partner introduces a very real structural threat. And no, it's not because this new partner is inherently bad for you or toxic or anything like that. It's because they threaten your friend's long-held position of being the one who truly knows and validates you. For years, they basically owned that emotional real estate in your life. And suddenly, out of nowhere, there's a competitor.
Which leads us to part 2. Unspoken contracts of exclusivity. You see, this structural threat we just talked about reveals a totally unconscious framework that governs these kinds of intense relationships. We're talking about invisible terms that absolutely nobody states out loud, but literally everyone subconsciously enforces. Terms like, we're each other's primary person, or we tell each other everything first, or we are available to each other without any competition. Think about it for a second. Think about those late-night phone calls or those immediate panicked texts when something goes wrong at work. That right there, that is the contract in action. But here's what happens. When you fall in love, you break this contract. And you do it simply by redistributing your time and your attention. Look, it's not some conscious, malicious decision to abandon your best friend. Any genuine new romance requires a massive investment of emotional priority. But to the friend who's left behind on the sidelines, this perfectly natural shift causes a profound, deeply felt sense of violation. But there's a massive catch here. Your friend will rarely, if ever, actually name this violation out loud. Why not? Well, because doing so requires them to admit the existence of this highly demanding contract that neither of you ever consciously agreed to in the first place. It just sounds totally unreasonable to say out loud, hey, you're supposed to text me before your partner, right? So instead of speaking up, all that hurt just silently simmers.
Moving right along to part 3, the shared singlehood bond. This dynamic gets even deeper when we look at the specific comfort we find in shared life stages, especially mutual stagnation.
Think about two friends who have been single for an extended period of time together. They've processed painful breakups over drinks. They've built an entire emotional language around navigating the dating world side by side. When you suddenly enter a serious relationship, your friend isn't just losing weekend time with you. They're literally losing their co-participant in a shared emotional narrative about their life stage. It was always us against the world, and now it kind of feels like you've switched teams. And as that shared identity dissolves, the friend left behind experiences legitimate, very real grief. They are actively mourning the end of an era. But here's the thing about grief. It's incredibly uncomfortable. And in this situation, it almost never manifests as sadness. Instead, it instantly masks itself as intense criticism of the new partner, the person who supposedly caused this separation.
Part 4. Disguising fear as criticism. So why does this resentment almost never get expressed honestly? Why can't a friend just look at you and say, hey, I really miss you?
It all comes down to a translation matrix of what is said versus what is actually felt. Finding specific, articulable concerns about a new partner is significantly easier than accessing that level of extreme vulnerability. When your friend says, he doesn't seem like he respects you enough, their hidden fear is really, I'm afraid of losing my position in your life. When they say, she seems controlling, what they're actually feeling is, I am no longer your primary priority. They simply lack the vulnerability to say, I'm scared. So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is this. When these critiques appear suddenly, and they scale proportionally with the seriousness of your romance, rather than any consistent, observable bad behavior from your partner, They are simply a socially acceptable disguise for unspoken fear. Let's be honest, it is much more acceptable in our society to play the role of the fiercely protective best friend than it is to admit to feeling abandoned and afraid. Finally, part 5, surviving the transition. Everything we've unpacked builds toward the ultimate test. What determines whether a friendship actually survives this painful transition or completely falls apart? The friendships that endure are the ones where both individuals consciously choose to abandon that disguise of criticism. Instead, they step up and take 3 distinct actions. First, they actually acknowledge the redistribution of attention. Second, they bravely name the natural grief and the fear of becoming less central to each other. And third, they explicitly renegotiate the friendship's terms to fit this entirely new stage of life.
On the flip side, the friendships that die are the ones trapped in endless, escalating objections about the new partner. The arguments just keep going in circles, causing deeper and deeper rifts. And they never resolve because, well, the real issue was never actually about the partner at all. The partner was just a scapegoat for a massive structural shift in the friendship's foundation.
It was always about the friendship, quietly asking a question it never had the language to ask directly. Where exactly do I stand now?